We had very few supplies. Obviously, we hadn't expected such a vicious attack, but we had some bandages and some basic first aid, which was rushed up.
Bandages
yeah,
and things like
and we
that.
just, I was literally running from one to the next. I mean, I'd taken this first aid course. I'd actually said, well, this is for Gaza, so perhaps you ought to teach us about bullet wounds and more extreme first aid than perhaps you would find here. So luckily, I'd been talked through that. So, and I was completely on my own with no experience, running from one to the other, trying to put bandages on and stem the bleeding, but basically it was just a bloodbath, actually.
Another thing we hear is that the Israeli army was actually kind of suggested by some of those people that to take the injured to the hospital as soon as possible, but because they delayed taking them to the hospital, delayed it, the whole thing, and they actually died on the boats. But if they were taken to the hospital in time, their lives could have been saved. Is that anything you know about this?
Well, what they did first was secure the ship and handcuff everybody before they started to actually
Each and every person was handcuffed?
Yeah, women and men. Eventually they did take the women's handcuffs off. They kept them on the wounded, however. They did evacuate the most urgent cases, but it did take a long time.
Ibrahim, earlier on you told me something about the captain and, the captain of the ship, and his wife and his baby was on the ship as well. What had happened to the baby and the wife of the captain, the ship's captain?
After the attacks, after the hour of attacks, and once we were all arrested, tied up with our hands with cable ties, similar to what you use for cars, and we were all taken to the top deck and had to kneel on the floor. And then a woman came with a child, and I never seen her before and know the child. And it was like, okay, you know, all of a sudden you see all this massacre going on, and then you see a child, and this is the last place you want to see a child. You know.
Sorry, how did you see the child?
Obviously, after everybody was being taken up to the top deck, everybody on board the ship, including captain.
How old the child was?
The child was about 1 year old, about 1 year old, maybe less. And basically, after returning home, returning to Turkey after the attacks, and after spending time in the prisons, I stayed with a captain of the other cargo ship, and he told me that the way the Israelis got control of the Mavi Marmara, the Israeli soldier, he pointed the gun at the head of the baby and said, you either give us the ship or the baby is gone. And I've got a picture here.
Show us the picture.
This is the picture of the wife of the captain and the baby.
Right. So they actually put the gun on the head of this little baby that's in the picture.
Yes.
And this is the captain's baby.
Yes, this is
and they said kind of a thing that, well, either it's the baby or the ship or the control. That means that they want to take the control of the ship. And they want the captain to come out.
Yes.
Okay, the captain came out afterwards.
Yes.
When they kind of blackmail him, they would kill his baby if he doesn't give the control over to them. What happened to the captain? Was he hurt? Was he harmed? Was he injured or anything?
I don't know exactly what happened to the captain, whether he was forced to take the ship to the port of Ashdod in Israel, or whether the Israelis took the ship. All we saw was the child and the wife of the captain.
Alex, anything to add on to what Ibrahim said about the baby, the captain's baby and his wife? And I mean, this is really horrible kind of a thing to see. The whole world, when people see these kind of things, I think they'll be horrified. How many people do you think were actually thrown out of the ship into the sea, into the waters?
I can't confirm that at all. I wasn't aboard the Marmara. As of last night, IHH tell me that everyone is now accounted for, but it's taken over a week because the Israelis wouldn't admit to who they had in detention and who they had in hospital. They wrongly told us that a British brother had been sent home, and we found out that he'd been in hospital in Israel until this point.
Okay, Ibrahim, do you have any information on this?
I
think we did talk about it, but I think how many people you have heard so far that they were thrown overboard?
Before the actual first person got killed, I actually looked overboard to see what was happening, and I did see a life jacket into the water. I wasn't sure if somebody was, because it was dark, and obviously the water, you know, you cannot see in the water. I don't know if somebody was in that life jacket, but I did see a life jacket go into the water.
Okay, Alex, what do you think the international community should do about this? How should people protest against this? in the legal ways. We're not saying to create any kind of a violence anywhere. What should the UN should the UN do about this? Or first of all, what should our British government do about this? Let's start from the British government.
From the British government, firstly, the British government should start remembering what authority they have and should stop capitulating to Israel about this. They've not in any way stood up to Israel even to protect the rights of the British citizens. We were barely visited in prison by the consul, who was a very nice gentleman, and simply said to me, I've been standing outside all day, they wouldn't allow me in, as though he had no authority whatsoever in the situation. When we were being illegally deported, some of us against our will, he said, but this is what Israel does, I can't stop them. The British government have to take action, and I don't just want words and statements from them. They can simply stop respecting the illegitimate authority that Israel has taken. This siege is illegal, it's illegitimate, it's a nonsense. They should stop diplomatic relations with Israel and start direct talks with the authorities in Gaza and open commercial shipping. They should be sailing in and out of Gazan ports as though they do with every other port in the Mediterranean.
Our previous, or shall we say, ex-Prime Minister, Mr. Tony Blair, he's a Middle East peace envoy. What do you think he should be doing? Should he do something about this, or is he going to do anything about it? Is there anything out there that you've read or heard that he's going to do anything about it?
That title is just an insult. I don't know how he dares to assign himself that title. As far as I know, he sits in a nice house in Jerusalem and does nothing useful.
Obama won the Peace Prize, a Nobel Peace Prize, before he actually became anything to do with the peace or anything to do with his present position in America, which is, I think, I talked to one of my other guests last time and they said it doesn't normally happen that the person gets a Peace Prize before they do anything, take any activity, get involved in any kind of activities, where Obama said that this Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize, is not for the things that he's done in the past, but which he will be doing in the future. So far, Laura, have you seen any hard reaction or anything from America, from Obama, who's supposed to be creating peace in the world?
Absolutely not. I think he's even found himself unable to give a statement of condemnation. And there was, remember, a US passport holder killed as one of the 9. He's, as usual, unable to condemn Israel at all. The British government, I think Nick Clegg has managed to criticise them a little bit. But unfortunately, yesterday I read that the British are negotiating a deal with Israel that if they can be allowed to just hold their own investigation without international involvement, that Israel in return may ease the blockade. And also yesterday I read that easing the blockade seems to mean that yesterday they decided to allow snack foods into Gaza, crisps and fizzy drinks and things like that. So this is the sort of deal that the British government seems to find acceptable.
Ibrahim, what do you think that UN should do against this? Should the UN take any action? Have they done anything positive in the past against the Israeli government? All these aggression that the world has watched, innocent men, women, children being killed every year, almost every few months, something major happens and the Palestinians are killed and they suffer. What do you think that UN what have they done in the past, what are they doing now, and what should they be doing in the future?
Personally, during my life, I've never really been into politics or getting involved in all this all these different negotiations, but like regarding what you're just talking about earlier, the British actually caused this issue in the first place of giving Palestine to Israel. So Britain are really accountable for not just what happened recently, but since the beginning of this, since the beginning of the struggle. And with the UN, from what I can say, it just seems that like the UN and so-called people are just saying things to make the ignorant people feel that they are doing something, but the people like us, we just know that they're just saying things just to please a few people, but not really actually doing anything.
Alex, what's anything to add on to what Ibrahim just said?
About the UN? Well, I think Israel holds the record for the highest number of resolutions passed against it. The UN General Assembly makes decisions against Israel year after year, but it has no teeth, and the US has power of veto over the Security Council. The UN isn't helping us at all here. And hopefully with this issue with the boats, we're going to force